Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to take your questions, but obviously very good news to see another 25 basis points reduction to the OCR, a good combination of monetary and fiscal policy working together to deliver those outcomes from a government responsible for fiscal policy, making sure we've got a good grip on spending, which is leading to lower inflation and therefore lower interest rates is an important thing, but happy to take your questions.
How much do you think the government is responsible for leading to this country?
Look, I think, as you've heard previous governors say, fiscal policy and monetary policy need mates, and you actually want fiscal and monetary policy aligned, and that's what you're seeing now with our government. And so our work on spending is directly contributing to lowering inflation, which then is obviously the precursor to lowering interest rates and getting the economy growing and moving again. So the two have a job to do. They work in partnership together. Yeah, what it means to families is that there's, if you think about a $500,000 mortgage, 25 years, it means that fortnightly repayments have been lowered by over $300. With the interest rate cuts that we've seen since we came to power, that's real money going into Kiwis' back pockets that they get to spend back into the economy again. And that's what we're trying to do, is we want to make sure that we help people through the cost of living, and one way we do that is lower inflation and lower interest rates.
Well, we struck a really balanced approach, which was on the one hand to deliver considerable savings, but to also keep investing in frontline health services, education services, our police, rebuilding our defence force. We judged that those are priority investments that will help secure New Zealand's growth into the future, and the balance we worked to strike was cleaning up the books, which is an essential job, while also investing in growth for the future. I think we've got it right. I am struck in the Reserve Bank's statement by just how much uncertainty they are seeing globally. And that, for me, underscores how important it is right now that we have responsible fiscal and economic management. We cannot take New Zealand's economic recovery for granted. Very good government is required right now. Yes, we can. What we know for a fact is that the last government's extremely high spending levels added fuel on the inflation fire and led inflation to get up over 7%. We now have inflation back in band, and that's partly because we've taken such a more responsible approach to spending. Our operating allowance was the lowest in a decade. That shows a prudent approach, and it's necessary because governments can make things a lot worse when it comes to inflation and interest rates, and we've taken it upon ourselves to make things better.
It could be argued that the reason we saw inflation fall as far as it did and where it is now is because of oil prices, not because of the government's moves around cutting its cloth in terms of government departments and whatnot. How would you respond to that?
Well, there's always a range of factors, but the reverse is also true. If we'd got the money bazooka out and sprayed it all around, you can bet inflation would have been higher.
And do you think that, the Reserve Bank wouldn't have banked a lot of your cuts in terms of their decision today? It's just too soon. Do you think that the next time they meet, they're going to, what you did in the budget is going to have more of a bearing?
Well, they did note in their monetary policy statement that they think our investment boost policy will lead to more business investment and that it will be growth enhancing. It's good to see the Reserve Bank reinforcing that. They also note that because its cost is offset with spending restraint elsewhere, they don't think it will be inflationary. So I think the Reserve Bank has reflected on the budget and can see that it is doing what we say it's doing, which is supporting growth, supporting low, stable inflation.
There's only so much you can do. There's several councils across the country that have got pretty high increases in rates. What's your message to them?
My message to them is, if you've got a Super Gold card, we've just increased the number of people who are eligible for a rebate, so I want to encourage superannuitants to get their Gold card and apply for a rates rebate. But look, my message to councils is always the same as the Prime Minister's, which is ratepayers can't handle massive rate increases, so cut your cloth, manage your expenses carefully.
Nicola, are you happy and comfortable that explanation of the equitable departure that is currently in the public domain is a full, complete and transparent explanation?
Yes.
Prime Minister, just quickly something else. Have you seen the headlines coming out of the around terrorist effort?
Yes, I have.
Are you concerned about these? Do you think it's going to impact any way on trade talks or what's it?
No, not at all. We've got a very strong relationship at the top-to-top level and with the relevant, ministers in the government. And Erica was frankly referencing the volume of emails that she gets around unsolicited immigration advice to her personal email. Maybe she could have worded it better, but the bottom line is I've got no concerns about that.
A couple of questions about the, there's been a lot of stuff tonight about top levels of the Treasury and the Reserve Bank. Does this add another layer of uncertainty to an environment that is already very uncertain?
No, we have also retained considerable levels of experienced people with good talent, but it is healthy and good for organisations to renew their teams, to bring in outside thinking, and I'm really pleased to see that both the Reserve Bank and the Treasury are creating opportunities for that.
How involved, Minister, have you been with the restructures or directing those agencies to change?
I haven't been involved in the restructures. I've been briefed on them by the Treasury Secretary. What I have consistently said publicly, I also say to the Secretary privately, which is I think it's very important that Treasury connect its mission to show fiscal restraint with our bigger mission, which is to drive growth in the economy. And I've wanted to see Treasury more joined up in the way it approaches issues, to always be thinking what's the thing that will grow the economy faster, and making sure their advice is consistent with that.
Prime Minister, the Ukrainian ambassadors suggested that you and Anthony Albanese visit Ukraine as part of that RNZ visit. Are you giving any consideration to that? Could you do that as part of your visits in June?
Yeah, look, I mean, open to looking at that. Obviously, we don't confirm trips until very close in, and there's a lot of logistical details we'd need to work through with both of our calendars and timings in Europe and other things. So there's no plans afoot at this point in time, but open to considering in the future.
Those conversations maybe with
We may well do. Yeah, I mean, we're, obviously, we've been invited, a couple of weeks back, and it's something that we'll continue to look at and consider if and when we can do, and but open to it. But there's just no logistics to confirm at this point. Well, I mean, ideally, for me to go up to Europe to do a single visit in that way, if I can put it together with some other things, if Anthony can do the same, and we can make it work for both of us, we're up. We'd be open to it. As you know, I've talked to President Zelensky quite a bit in my time as Prime Minister. I've got to know him, met with him personally as well, participated in a lot of the calls in Europe and spoken in those forums as well. And we stand with Ukraine very clearly. There's one actor here who can stop this war, which is Russia, immediately. There's one actor that can make a decision, that come to the table and have an immediate ceasefire. We can do that tomorrow, and Putin and Russia need to be able to do that. So, look, it's a great invitation. We appreciate it. We need to think through logistics before we could commit to do anything. Well, I don't think she was at the breakfast that I spoke at this morning, or maybe heard me on radio on ZB this morning with Nick Mills. I was very aspirational and ambitious for Wellington. It's a city that I've lived in. I've loved living in here. It's a fantastic place. It's got a great future, and that was what I was expressing today. So it was all about ambition for Wellington. Absolutely not. Go listen. If you were there for the breakfast and you heard the full conversation, you'd fully agree that I was very positive about the future for Wellington, but we need to get moving, and all my comment was a lot less ideology and a lot more common sense solutions to problems that exist here.
You also said that Wellington deserves the mayor that they've got, or along those grounds.
No, so I would have said you deserve what you get, and if you choose not to vote, and you think about voter turnout in local government elections here in Wellington and around the country, if 60% of people aren't voting or 65% aren't voting, by default, we have a democracy's important, voting's important. If you don't take that, if you take that for granted, you end up getting officials and people representing you that you may not like, but then don't complain about it. I mean, get the people that you want representing your community in your local government. And sorry. Well, I didn't say that. I said any city in any town across the country, I'm encouraging people to vote in local government elections that are coming up, because you get representation, and if you choose, I'm not going to bother voting in local government elections. That's not what we want. We want people to participate in it.
As a Wellingtonian, I can be really clear that there are a lot of very frustrated ratepayers in this city who have watched their council prioritise the wrong projects, and they share those concerns with me readily. I'm sure they also share those concerns with Tory whānau, and she's very aware that her council is not seen in a great light by everyone in Wellington.
Are you going to vote for it?
No.
She's not running again.
We don't endorse council candidates.
Look, I think she could have expressed it better. I get that, but the point is, she genuinely was talking to a volume of unsolicited emails she gets from people all around the world. Obviously, the recent case was obviously ones that were at the top of her mind was from India, but that reach out to her personal account. But look, at the end of the day, we've got very good relationships at top to top level. We're continuing to deepening those. As you know, we're in full FTA negotiations. We've had some very good face-to-face meetings already, and I'm very comfortable with where we are for now.
There's only conversations between anyone and the government and the Indian government?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
It's appropriate that the public service to stop leaking was safe and
Well, I think the real shame there is that actually, when you have public servants that do leak documents like we've seen, it's really undermines the public service. And I think they do the public service a big disservice, frankly, and the public's trust in the public service is a problem. And that's why I think it's pretty unfair, because we've got some great public servants in New Zealand. We're very well served by some awesome people. And I think it's not fair on them when you have their colleagues actually leaking out in the way that they do. And so, it just undermines trust in the public service in general. I don't think that's a good thing. Well, I mean, we've always had leaking in different governments, but I mean, it's ultimately up, individuals are trusted to serve the government of the day and to do so in a politically neutral way. That's what we expect. That's the way that we don't have politically appointed public servants, unlike other countries that do it that way. We don't think that is the right way. But ultimately, as I said, it just undermines trust in the public service, and I think it's not fair on their colleagues that get tarred with that, when actually there's a lot of hard-working public servants doing an outstanding job, working with us and our government, and we really appreciate them. About the what, sorry? Yeah, I mean, I just have to say... Yeah, I mean, the reality is, it's a tremendous tragedy what's happened, that someone should not have lost their life, and, our thoughts are very much with the family and friends of that young man. What I would say is it's a good reminder to people about individual responsibility, but also, as I said this morning, to the adults that are associated with this, for the influencers that may be supporting it, I just think, they've got to ask some serious questions now of themselves. Yeah.
But for the more organised events that we're seeing, is there something you can do or some kind of message that you can send?
Well, I don't think there's a practical piece of legislation or something that I can pass here in government, but all I can say is, as I've said, I'd call on those organisers, those adults who are responsible for these events, to seriously rethink, stop and rethink. Yeah.
Can I just make one more comment on the OCR? Because one of the things...
It's such good news.
Well, it is good news, and there's two things that I wanted to say about it that I didn't get the chance to say. One is that the Reserve Bank forecasts that from June, around half of the existing mortgages will be refixing. So what that means is that many New Zealanders over the next few months are going to feel lower interest rates in their bank accounts and their household budgets. And that's good news, obviously, for them, but it's also really good news for our local businesses, because when people have more money in the household budget, they're more likely to spend at local shops, local cafes, and we look forward to that helping the economic recovery on its way. The other point that I wanted to make about the OCR reduction is that when interest rates are lower, it makes it easier for some first home buyers to enter the market, because they can afford to service a mortgage at a lower interest rate. So a lower interest rate, it's great news for those who've got a mortgage, those who want a mortgage, and it's good news for local businesses. Well, we're not forecasting that in the Treasury projections. We would not be a government that would sit by and allow a 30% increase in house prices in 1 year, but that is what the last Labor government did, and that did more to lock people out of housing than just about anything else, and I think was a national shame, because you can promise 100,000 Kiwi build homes, but if you deliver a 30% house price increase in a year, you're locking generations out of housing. I think New Zealanders will judge our government on what we do and what we deliver. I'm proud that the budget that we've just delivered demonstrates that we are getting in behind the growth they need to see for their jobs, for their incomes, but at the same time we're managing the books really responsibly. New Zealanders are giving me feedback that they're really pleased to see that responsible approach. They understand that we've got a hard job to do, we've got to clean up after the party, but they're glad to see us doing it.
Do you see it as a test, though, that after June, once those interest rates come down, your polling will still go up? Do you see that?
I'd just say, look, we're focused on making sure we clean up the mess and we get things done for Kiwis. We've said that from day one. We've got 3 years to demonstrate that to New Zealanders, that they're better off under this government than they were and the path that we were on. I think New Zealanders are seeing that increasingly. We've spent the last 2 days out together, a number of businesses that are actually very excited about investment boost. I spent this morning again with business owners, small, medium and large, and they are starting to see that we're turning the corner. Yes, there's volatile times ahead, and I think New Zealanders understand you do not want to put it at risk. And last week was a great case in point. What we saw was economic illiteracy from the opposition, and I think New Zealanders see that and they go, well, is it in, is it out, are you taxing or are you borrowing more? And they know what they're going to get with Nicola and I, which is good, steady financial management. We'll navigate this boat through some choppy waters, but we'll get to the other side into the potential that we know that sits here. So look, we're not fixated on the politics of it. We're really fixated on the outcomes and improving the joint, and more importantly, delivering for New Zealanders on the things that they want us to deliver for them. Okay, thank you, team. Appreciate it. Have a good day.